Hi students, Professor Laney again. Chapter 3, Part 2, apparently. It looks like it takes a flash or a shockwave plugin to use this, and it just kind of failed. So I went ahead and um, that was the end of that section, 3.5, 3.4, so we're just going to go ahead and jump to 3.5. I want to make sure that everything is going to be great here, and it's going to work awesome, and let's get to full screen. Okay, good. Right. So 3.5. Yeah, make sure you watch all the videos. They really help illustrate what's going on here in the book. But cultural diversity and culturally responsive instruction is 3.5. Okay. Culturally responsive instruction, meaning you need to respond to the cultures that are in your classroom. I mean, it's the words kind of help give us clues. Let me take these off. These are a little glary. The words give us clues to what's really happening here. Okay. So culturally competent teachers engage in virtually responsive instruction, meaning they really have to be able to kind of switch it up and incorporate it because every class is different, every year is different, right? And even some students move and some students come, and you have to kind of think on your feet a little bit. Again, it really teaches to the strengths of all the students. Remember, chapter 2, incorporating all kinds of tips and techniques for all learners, supporting all learners. This is part of that, but this is really focused in a little bit more on the culture. Again, teachers should know the backgrounds and the heritage and traditions. I had my son's preschool teacher. She asked me if we celebrated Kwanzaa. And you know what? The answer is yes, we do celebrate Kwanzaa. And this year Hanukkah starts on the 24th of December, and then it's Christmas, and then Kwanzaa. So that's like bam, bam, bam. That'll be great. So we call it Christmas Kwanzaa. And we celebrate all those traditions in our house. So she asked me, she's like, do you celebrate Kwanzaa? And would you like to talk to the class about Kwanzaa? And would you like to, and I was like, sure. And it was great. So I thought that was really, really nice. And culturally competent teachers also really understands how culture has a role in education, because education here is different than back east and all over the world, right? So culture is everything. Teachers, again, self-reflect, also take responsibility and not knowing everything. It's okay. Also learn from their students. I love learning from students because, I mean, the second I think I know everything, that's a problem, right? So I need to learn from everybody as much as I possibly can. Enriches a classroom with examples. I try to do that as much as possible. I do understand that I'm of the dominant culture, but I grew up in Placentia. I had a very multicultural education. All of my schools were Title I. Um, I had a very, very diverse upbringing. So, um, I, I don't know how to say that and not sound completely white. And yes, I use white as a very specific term at that point. But I like to think that I was one of the different type of white people who understood. I have a friend who tells me, she says, you're the most cultured white person I know. And by the way, my heritage is German. And you've seen my maiden name in the course catalog, but it's Mertzweiler. So I understand what it's like when you have a teacher who just cannot, for years and years, nobody could say my last name properly. I understand what that's like. Our heritage is very unique in that there's like 13 Mertzweilers in the United States. And so our family is very, very small. And so I kind of have some idea, but never exactly the idea of what it's like to be somebody else or have those kinds of struggles or people assuming something about you that's not exactly true. Yeah, so I've been there before, and it doesn't feel great, but I also look at there's two ways. That person could use more information, and it also tests us on how to react properly, right? It's not always easy when you just want to say you're ignorant, but that's not going to help the situation either. Okay, so again, teachers can do a good job. Some do, some don't. So let's hope that they do. Again, this is culturally responsive teaching. These are the tips that came on page 67. Okay, we really have to look at what works. Use what works, people. I tell you that. Use what works, right? Also, culturally responsive instruction, right? Legitimizes different heritages. We can't say, oh, the herding people of the sub-Saharan. We watch the nonverbals, watch the attitudes, and especially when you have students who are marginalized and they're not they're not fitting in places. Teachers have that responsibility to make sure that students are engaged. Even at the college level, we got an email today that was like, student engagement is everything. What dimension of student engagement have you committed to? You made a commitment at the convocation in December. Are you still doing it? Like, so they even push us at the college level because community college is a reflection of the community. Know these course terms. Culturally competent means you're good at it. Culturally responsive instruction, we just went over that. Mutual accommodation, it means that it's kind of like that cultural pluralism. We've accepted, we use students' language and cultures, and it's becomes part of the classroom culture. So then you're almost creating your own unique culture, and I really, really like that. Okay, make sure that we are on board here. Fantastic. Um, our next section here is linguistic diversity. Not a not a new concept here. We all know that there's different languages. Now, I like how the book kind of separates academic language versus social conversational language, and we'll learn about that here. And if you can really get curious about a student, you can see which one's better. And sometimes they are great in one and not great in the other. Sometimes they need help in one but not help in the other. So you got to just really get to know them. Again, learning new languages takes time, and sometimes people are better at reading it and writing it than speaking it. I took 5 years of Spanish. I'm pretty comfortable reading it and writing it. Speaking it, not so much. So it's one of those things that I see the process of people when you can code switch in the middle and you can say like, like voy a regresar al, the store, like if you can kind of like do it in two languages, you're in a good shape because then you can see the symbolic language switching, okay? And again, students sometimes have better listening skills and sometimes people have better talking skills. It's called reception, communication reception, and expression. We'll talk more about that here. Obviously, linguistically diverse means speaking other than English. ELLs or ELs or LEPs, limited English proficiency, same thing. They're learning. Okay. Ooh, that one's off base. I'll have to move that over. Basic interpersonal conversation skills. This is that social conversations that people can have with their peers. Maybe they're good at it, maybe they're not. Okay. And then there's academic language proficiency. If you can talk about the coefficient of X, Y, and Z, which you'll see an example here on the bottom of page 69. If a student can say things like plants generate their own food using sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water through a process called photosynthesis. That's hard to even say for me. If they've learned that type of language, that means they're comfortable with academic language. But if they can't say, hey, will you come play with me? Then the social language is a little bit lacking still, right? And again, that might give an identification of where that student is learning the language or even a cognitive rewiring issue, right? As we'll see, students on the spectrum a lot of times don't know how to say, hey, come play with me, okay? And again, receptive language is language that you've received, right? Right? And not every message has to have words on it. Some of this, you've received the message, right? I'm irritated or annoyed, right? And then expressive language is to be able to communicate or express feelings or thoughts, and even in sign language, right? Okay. A lot of information here. Okay. Effective practices for ELLs. These are some tips and tricks here. Okay. And again, there are some things that work and some things that don't, but we have to try. We have to use what does work. But at the same time, gen ed teachers really have the responsibility of trying because we'll see what happens when they don't. Okay. And some of this bilingual instruction and it's sheltered instruction that we'll learn about, sometimes it's dependent on really what's going on in that school district, the funding, things like that, or personnel. So again, as long as it's actually complex, just because somebody's learning a language doesn't mean you have to go super easy on them. Work with them, but at the same time, if you make it too easy, then they're not challenged. And then as long as the environment is supportive, as in they practice at home or at least the parents that says, I might not know how to practice with you, but you need to practice, right? And again, this is very important to know. Bilingual students do better cognitively in most areas. I mean, honestly, when you can understand that one item means two different things, like I can say purse or like bolsa, or like bag or whatever, like if you understand one item can have two different names, then you have already created a neural pathway that's going to be stronger than somebody who's monolingual, right? They said it might even push off the onset of like dementia. Yeah. And also children who are bilingual or even emerging bilingual have a better theory of mind. They can understand how other people are feeling or your point of view differently and better, which is great. I think that's a huge skill for people. Additive bilingualism just means that you haven't dropped your first language. Sheltered instruction is just a way to teach English in like a little pocket like sheltered, right? But it's language and content. It's everything, right? But it's a sheltered instruction, okay? And then this protocol, the PSYOP protocol, it's really that research-based model we talked about. If it's not research-based, then you shouldn't do it. Why do it? It provides a consistent framework, like a guideline, like a skeleton for developing lessons and reflecting on improving that instruction. Okay, so again, it's almost like an operating manual on how to do sheltered instruction properly. Okay, I really like this. Again, really like this chapter because it helps lay the foundations for the rest of them when we keep going. After chapter 4, we'll start talking about different sets of disabilities and characteristics. And so all these 4 chapters apply to all of the rest of the chapters. So again, even though the exams are not cumulative, you will kind of be drawing, right? Just because you learned the letter A when you were in preschool doesn't mean you never have to use the letter A again. We do use the things we've learned, okay? Disproportionality, that means that things are not balanced. I'm going to try to make it nicer here. Disproportionality. Overrepresented and underrepresented. Okay, what does that mean? CLD students, this is, again, cultural and language diverse students, tend to be more frequently in special ed. Not because they're supposed to be in special ed, but because the teachers or the administration or the testing personnel has not really identified what they really, really need. So again, if they're doing all these protocols up to now, then they will be able to figure it out. But a lot of times people are just like, oh, well, you didn't answer me right away, so you must be developmentally delayed, or you must be you might have an intellectual disability. That's not the case. It's somebody still learning English. And again, English is hard. Okay. And again, we really have to look at this risk ratio and why students of certain ethnic groups are automatically going to show up in different areas more than others. It's crazy. It drives me crazy. Again, they end up in special ed, but not because they're supposed to. And this may have happened to you. I get one student every semester who's like, oh yeah, I was put in special ed and I don't know why. Urgh. But culturally, we're not supposed to ask questions. We're not supposed to say no. We're not supposed to go against the teachers and stuff, right? Now, I try to give an example, and I hope this really does it for you, Gabe. If there's 2 groups who like chocolate, okay, and one group of students, they all like chocolate. So it's a 100% probability that somebody in that group, if pulled out, you ask them, do you like chocolate? The answer is yes. Now, in this group over here, only about half of the people like chocolate. So you have about half of a probability of pulling a student out and saying, do you like chocolate? It could be half yes or half no, right? Okay. Now, what happens is that when students who are misrepresented, they have a higher chance of this. So this group with the 50%, they have a higher chance of being in special ed just because half of them are and half of them aren't, right? I want to explain this to you in a way that makes it a little bit impactful. Okay, so let's look at the page on page 73. There's a table right here. Again, according to the table on page 73, you're going to see some numbers that are bolded here. So if you look at intellectual disabilities, and then you go over to the Hispanic, or I'm sorry, the Black non-Hispanic, there's 30% of those students 30% of students with intellectual disabilities happen to be Black. That's not a problem, right? However, the entire population of the school is only 16%. So that means there's a 5 times chance, so in a group of 5 students, there will be, let's see, 30%. They're 5 times more likely to be just in special ed if you're Black, right? But if you're a white non-Hispanic, there's 60% of those students are in the school just like the regular population, and half of those students would be identified with intellectual disabilities. So basically, there's a bigger ratio of students who are black and in special ed, and it's going to give you the calculations down here. So it's 2.75. That's the risk ratio. One is about the 100%, but the 2.75, that means they are overrepresented. Look, that's a big number. That's the biggest number in this whole chart. At 2.75, they're basically saying if you're black, you're pretty much going to be in special ed. No. That doesn't make sense at all. That doesn't make sense at all. So maybe the test is wrong. Maybe the teachers are wrong. Maybe the administration's wrong. Maybe the community's not supporting, right? So that's what we talk about a risk ratio. When it's over 1, it's overrepresented. When it's under 1, they're underrepresented. So you'll see some very small numbers. Like, what is the smallest number here? See, 0.39. A specific learning disability in the Asian community. That's really small. So it's possible that that number is accurate, but it's also possible that people are pushing themselves so hard, or they take the test and they can hide it a little bit. A little confusing, but crazy. This is our elementary school data. You guys, I put this right here so you could look at it. It's listed in the book, but you can look under OCR data. And look at this. I just pulled up all of the schools in Santa Ana, and look at this. Let's just look at autism here. So this means less, I think this means less than 1% here. At this school, there are 10 Hispanic kids with autism. The total number of kids with autism is 10. That means all of the kids in that class who are autistic are also Hispanic. Is that possible? So you're saying, first of all, there's no white kids in there, in that school, and none of the white kids have autism? I find that hard to believe. It's possible, but I find that very hard to believe. Okay, that means 100% are Hispanic. 100% of the autistic kids are Hispanic. Century High. Ooh, I just did the highest. Oh, same here. Look at this. 4 Hispanic. Total 4. Really? I would think maybe one of the schools had an autistic, Caucasian kid. Huh. And again, these are the California goals and data. And again, I left that website up here for you guys to see. Okay. No more than 10% of districts will have rates of suspension and expulsions of children with disabilities for greater than 10 days in a school year. They're seeing that there's a difference, and you cannot discriminate against a kid like that. So it's an issue, and schools know. Okay. Again, underrepresentation and overrepresentation. Risk ratio are those numbers here. And risk index, those are the 2.75s here. It's crazy. Okay. Drives me. Ooh, gets under my skin. And again, CLD students and their families might not understand all the different things that are going on here, but creating a pivotal moment is really what can change a student's life and really make things key for them. Okay. And again, what can educators do, right? Build those trusting relationships, mentor and advocate those students, and transmit academic knowledge to really just get in there and get to know them and help them, okay? This is an important term. I want to make sure you guys know that. This is your journal assignment. Again, you're going to watch Miss Rita Pierce. She's so awesome. And I asked you a couple questions in the journal about who was your champion. And make sure you know what the difference between equal and equitable is. They're not the same. And that was misidentification. The last part is the review. Okay, our summary here is that we have our responsibility for responsive instruction. Cultural diversity is not going away. Let's work with it, people. Linguistic diversity, yeah, again, it's not going away. How do we work with it properly? And reducing the misidentification. How do we correctly identify somebody who needs help? And don't just put them in a category just because I think they might be like that. It's not about your opinion. Okay. Again, these are recommended videos, but here's the deal. This is our, here's Jose Vargas right here. I added him here because he did a TED Talk, and you know how I love my TED Talks. He's part of our chapter, but I want you to watch both because it's amazing. He didn't know he was undocumented. So I might, that one's good. Oh gosh, that one's good. That one's good. That one's good. That one's good. They're all good. Ah. Make sure you watch those. And then those are websites, resources, organizations. I'm kind of ripping through here fast because I know this has been a long one. And professional journals. I put this one in here because Teaching Tolerance is free, so check it out on their website and you can request it. This is Mendez versus Westminster on Wikipedia. Check it out. And then the second one under there is Chapman College has this whole like write-up about it as well. So whew, remember, quiz is due by Sunday. I'm going to start really working, getting that grade sheet really worked out and get everything kind of squared away, any other details. And then heads up, next week, at the end of next week, we're going to have an exam. But if you guys got the quizzes down, then you're going to be a pros at the exam. So that was chapter 3. And that was fantastic. So I apologize it's in 2 parts, but that might help some of you. And I will see you soon in the virtual world.